come in?
Hey, Judy.
Hi, Judy.
Okay, I have just muted everyone. So Deborah, you're going to need to unmute yourself. And my name is Marilyn Orsini, and I am president of the Art Alliance for Contemporary Class. And these meetups we've been having weekly, basically because we weren't getting together, we weren't traveling, we weren't seeing glass. And so we started doing this as a way for us to actually have a way to showcase art and to still meet as a community. And but this week has been particularly difficult, as most of you know. And Deborah and I had a conversation yesterday. Should we have our presentation today? And I'm probably going to get emotional as I talk about this, so I apologize. But she had a comment.
It's okay. We got you.
She had a comment that was so wonderful, and I've since researched it about, because I said, you know, the thing is, I don't know what to do personally. And she said, well, what about this moving from an ally to an accomplice? So most of us have been inclusive and have worked for social justice, many of us throughout our lifetimes, but now's the time for us to personally move it a little bit and move from just being an ally to the cause to actually being an accomplice, to looking at how we can work for systemic change. Of all the artists I know, Deborah Czeresko probably has represented working for social justice and change and been vocal about it in her work. And with her work at Blown Away, almost every piece had a significant meaning behind it. It wasn't just a nice piece of glass. So it really seemed like it was the perfect time for us to have a presentation by Deborah Czeresko, and so I just want to say thank you for your bravery, Deborah, and thank you for hanging in there against all the odds that you had as an artist. And I encourage people to support the artists when we have these meetups, and we're going to see Deborah's work today. Some of it is for sale, and I would encourage you to contact Heller Gallery if you see something you like, and or Deborah directly, and help an artist. So Deborah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm going to go into what mode you want me to go into? Speaker view?
You just do screen share.
Oh, sorry. Screen share. Okay, I'm going to just call it. There it is. Okay, screen share. Here's my screen. Okay, share. Oh, my meeting's starting. And okay, here's all my emails, everybody, 3,000 of them. So, I mean, I just want to say thank you before we get started. Thank you for having me. I question whether I should be doing this and taking any attention from the issue at hand, but you know, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And on top of that, I felt like my work was relevant to the moment, and I was also a little traumatized, which is not a good reaction if you want to take action. So I felt like getting back in the game and talking to some people about my work and what I do would really get me mentally moving again. So I welcome this opportunity to do this. So I'm gonna open up some slides to begin with. I'm gonna talk about things as I go. The first thing I'm opening up is what I did on Blown Away, and I'm going to talk about those pieces, but I added another piece. I snuck this one in. I put it on social media today before I came into the studio, and this is a piece I did in 1992 when I was in graduate school, and it's my voter identification card. And that was displayed in New Orleans at the Contemporary Arts Center. Why is this important? Okay, there's really obvious reasons. Well, the most important reason I think it's important to me now is what Marilee was saying about going from allyship to accomplice, I realized what privilege I just assumed by having this card to begin with, and then putting it in a public space where, which for most people implies privilege as well. So there was a double privilege here. So I wrote a statement, which I'm going to read. The sentiment of this piece was to illuminate the importance and urgency of everyone to vote. This is glaringly still true. Being able to display the ID was a privilege. It was easy for me to get that document. That is not the case for all American citizens. And I then quote something from the ACLU. I didn't realize what a privilege it was to have a voter identification card. Many Americans do not have one of the forms of identification states to be acceptable for voting. These voters are disproportionately low-income racial and ethnic minorities, the elderly, and people with disabilities. So I didn't realize at that time that just by putting it up and thinking I was doing the right thing, I actually was doing the wrong thing in a way. Now I'm more aware, and I wanted to use this as an example of how we become accomplices as opposed to just being allies. So I thought this was really important to bring up, because that's what we were talking about yesterday. How do we move into actual actions? So I think I'm identifying how can I make a difference with what's going on now, because I really do feel passionately about it. I do feel like certain life parallels that I've had as a queer woman throughout sort of coming out in the 80s really was, there are parallels. I know it's not completely the same, but there definitely were parallels and prejudices about how I looked and life-threatening situations that ensued. So now I'm going to get into the, that's my political campaign. Now I'm going to get into the first episode of Blown Away. They asked us to bring a picture of us at a significant time in our lives. This is me in 1990 something. With the first sculpture I did at the then New York Experimental Glass Workshop, I was invited by a photographer to address the reopening of Ellis Island as a tourist attraction. There was apparently a lot of medical research being done on immigrants back then, and it wasn't, you know, of course it was brushed under the carpet. So she did these really eerie photographs of the property, and then I made these sort of medical type apparatus that were really kind of sinister and drip water. But that was my most formative piece, a photograph, because it was my first sculpture, my first installation, and it sort of demarcated me as an artist. But in the background, the backdrop in Soho, New York, there was the AIDS crisis raging. So we're going back to a different crisis. And this piece is called Out of Breath. And what it's supposed to be, it's hard to see. This is the piece that I made. It's hard to see. It's supposed to be one of these things that you put over your face when you can't breathe. So it's sort of referring to the agony and the ecstasy of that moment, how we have these joyous things happening simultaneously with these horrific things happening. We have to sort of address them all. So that that was my piece. And then when COVID happened, I thought, geez, this piece was really a sort of a foreshadowing of things to come. Sorry, there we go. The second challenge was about food. And we were challenged to make a serving dish for food or represent food in some way. So at that time, I was reflecting on things that were important to me. And this is when there was a lot of the Mexican border issue going on, and children were being taken away from their parents. And I wanted to, and I also really like tacos. So I then decided to try to elevate both Mexican culture and Mexican food. We know food's very cultural. We're all pretty passionate about it typically. So I combined the biggest badass of goblet making, the Venetian style goblet, which reflects like bourgeois or I don't even know if they had that word back then, but Renaissance Venetian culture, and a lot of skill and elitism with the street food of taco. So these are Venetian style taco holders. So once a little bit of humor going on. The first piece didn't have as much humor in it, which I typically bring to all my work. I like to have a full range of emotions in pieces. There's not, like I said, not only horror in life, there's also the ecstasy of life. So I try to reflect that in the pieces themselves. So these are the Venetian style taco holders. The next piece was a lighting challenge. We were given a light bulb and an electrical cord and told to design a light fixture using those things. So I don't know if you all know, but I have been doing a lot of lighting to support myself for the past 15 years, I would say. I don't even know. I don't count. Just do it. And so I decided to try to make something that would go outside. Something I see every day walking around New York City is those don't walk signs. So this is the beginning of a piece that was like where I was making a bigger, more graphic version of that. So it was like in your face more every time you walked across the street. Because I felt like it was like, don't do, like rethink everything is kind of what it's about. We see all these things are sort of coming to play. If I were to get criticism, in the first episode I said I have lovers and haters and I'm a polarizing figure. And I thought that's the stupidest thing I could have ever done. I'm inviting controversy, but somehow I just blurted it out. It was in my core. And I didn't mean that I wanted to divide people purposely. I just meant by taking a stand, I would have that happen. And in fact, there was a lot of vocal kind of haters on trolling. And for the exact reason I think is really important now, and which I have a lot of self-respect for now and what it brought to the show, taking a stance with the material, injecting the material with some kind of a political concept or something beyond using the beautiful glass. I want to seduce people with this glass. I love glass, but I also want to infuse it with concept. So those people that hated me and criticized me, hate me for the exact same reason that it's like, I feel like really relevant right now. And it was so affirming to go over this with you yesterday, Marilyn, and see that I was like right on target, I think, with what I was doing. I can hold my head high here. So the next piece is about gender equality. It's called Embito, Man Bun in the Oven Robot. The challenge was to make a robot in glass. And I was really like, this is the first shitty challenge we've gotten, excuse my French. But I was like, how do you make a mechanical thing? Like, I'm thinking nuts and bolts and I'm like in glass. So I was like, kind of freaking out when I went back to the hotel room that night because we got to the challenges the day before. And I was like, what does glass do well? Let's just really, like, let's just stop thinking about metal and think about, think outside of the box, basically, and think, what does it do well? And it's like, it holds liquids, obviously. It does that really well. It reflects things. So I went through some of the concept, like what it does. It morphs and transforms into different states. So it has an inherent qualities of transformation. But what could I make a robot? So I started to think about fluid and then amniotic fluid. And then I got to a gender equality meeting the fluid and pregnancy. And like, so this item is a robot designed for men specifically to have babies, and really obviously anyone that can't. But the idea was gender equality, ultimate gender equality through equality of the sexes with birthing. So that's the first challenge I won. Let's see. This was a decanter and a wine glass. This is a very, this sort of took the concept away a little bit because the judge was very, very conservative, a very conservative wine connoisseur. And she, in the end, we didn't know this when we were given a challenge, but she didn't want to see anything that other than a decanter that could pour well. So anybody that put anything beyond that into it was immediately, she didn't want to see concept. So I feel bad for actually the person that was eliminated that time, because I felt like she really tried hard to bring something more than just a decanter. a functioning decanter. But I tried to go design on this one. I tried to be more designy, since it was functional, supposed to be functional. Kathy sort of winked at us in the women's room, we were all in there, and she's like, don't do any color. This judge is not gonna like. She gave us a little behind the scenes there. Oh God, you gotta take that out. I shouldn't be saying that. So this is an amoeba. Use a microscopic organism. I've been focusing a lot on the body, and I said, well, let me go with microscopic bodies, which are now affecting us greatly. Viruses. This is an amoeba. It's not a brain-eating amoeba or a flesh-eating amoeba. It's a better one. But amoebas are really beautiful and really lend themselves, their forms well to glass. And I just wanted to show how you could design without being classical and just making a standard thing. So it has these pseudopods in the bottom. Down here has organelles, and it actually did work well. Unfortunately, the judge was really weak, and she tried to pick it up and she did like how it fit in your hand, like that it really secured itself, because it's the exact same amount of divots that there are fingers. So, but then she could barely lift it, she said, and she knocked it down for that. I would never have won. I knew with this, I was going to get to the next level. With this one, it was clear if you put reticello in it, you were going to win. So this next piece, it was a floral. I should go full screen here. There we go. The challenge was about making floral. It was, part of the description was to not make gift shop daisies out of glass. And then I was like, I don't want to make a flower at all. I don't really, I like flowers, but they're really not my thing, which I always am searching for atypical beauty in my work. So that's one thing I think throughout it all, that is resonating. It's sort of autobiographical. I feel like I'm an atypical beauty. So I'm full of myself there. But no, I feel atypical. I don't know the beauty part, but I see the world in a slightly different way when it comes to beauty. So I originally wanted to do seaweed, and I was thinking kelp garden. I had these two things, potatoes and kelp. And I was really feeling like, well, I want to really bring the concept of these like powerhouses that you forget, and they grow and they can be divided and feed hundreds of people, but yet I was very inspired by Ikebana and how it's usually like off center or wabi sabi and stuff like that, and how that's an amazing aesthetic. So I want to have like a potato bonsai setting, but I thought it was way more meaningful because to me it represented like all marginalized people that were marginalized entities that weren't sort of, just because they didn't look like the perfect flower, weren't getting the same attention in the world or worth. And so this one resonates with today really strongly. I feel very happy about making this piece, and I got a lot of support for this from all different races, ethnicities, genders, and it was really heartwarming to see like crossing barriers. And I think that's what's different about today's movement. It's not an us against them thing anymore. It's like, let's join together, let's ally, let's become accomplices, and then just empower everybody. Like, so there's something different going on with today's movement that I think is really, I'm so glad to be alive right now, even though it's difficult. I am so glad to see this happening. I hope it pans out in the long run. It has to. So this piece was still to me really, really an important piece, reflecting everything I believe in. And I thought I had a good chance at winning this one, but I did not win this challenge. Alex won it with his orchid, which is also a nice piece. I knew it was orchid against potato. Orchid won, but it was a shriveled orchid. I have to give him that. He's a great artist. I thought that I would be going to the finale with Alex. I really respect his work. And he has technique as well. I felt like I really thought he was my biggest competition. This is called The Color of Fresh. This piece is more kind of like goes in a more erotic zone. It's like the toothpaste is this like thing where you squeeze and squeeze and like you're trying to get the last drop out, and then suddenly this huge splooge of beautiful
You can say the word.
ejaculate comes out. just thinking in a different way, like just about glass and its sensuality, basically. And I was thinking, it was a pop art challenge, and I was like, I want to go to a different level. A lot of that pop art is subtly sexual, like with huge cherries or whatever it may be, with squishy forms, with Klaus Oldenburg, and I was like, I'm going to double down on that, the sensuality of glass with this toothpaste. So, and I really did want to use cane because I felt like that was getting points. It was a competition after all. So, and I wanted to show I could sculpt. This is beautiful toothpaste holder and toothpaste tube. And then unfortunately on this one, I had some equipment malfunctioning. So I couldn't make it as voluptuous as I originally intended. I really had a vision for it with a lot of folds and whatever. So anyway, this all this work, by the way, is still in Canada. It's owned by the production company. We were hired as contractors, not as talent, which is what they call, like Kathy, the evaluator, was talent. But we were contractors, so all the work we did is owned by the production company. I've made versions of some of this work, like the potatoes, for example. This to me was a total triumph technically, and it did win that challenge. The evaluator was a ballerina for this one, and it was, the challenge was the body in motion. I knew there was 3 people left, me being one of them at this point, and I knew the other 2 people, Janusz and Alex, really didn't focus on sculpting. They focused on glass blowing in their careers. But I focused on being a sculptor. So I define myself more as a glass sculptor than like a blower, even though I am a glass blower. I also do solid sculpting a lot. So I felt like I really needed to make something out of solid glass that I felt like my competitors could not do, to show how much skill I had, because the human body, let's face it, everybody knows what it looks like in general, like what a hand looks like, what a foot looks like. So we can all be instant critics of the form. And also it becomes very heavy and hard to rotate or reheat. It's kind of difficult, and my assistants are basically students from Sheridan College. I wasn't secure about their skill level, and they or the stamina level. It took a lot of stamina. It was a pretty hot studio, but we made it. I was very happy about that, because if it went down, if it broke, I would not have been able to remake it. I would have had a piece of bubble gum. So this is a foot representing classical sculpture, stepping off a pedestal and into a big blob. Here we have the blob again. I guess I like blobs. I do like blobs, actually. Glass lends itself to blobs. Stepping in gum. And the gum is sort of representative of all this stuff about like what we're going through now. How come it takes so long to make progress in the world? We keep stepping in the same old shit, basically over and over again. And then the gum is so elastic. So it's metaphorically really powerful, because it keeps pulling you back. It's really hard to get off your foot, but it doesn't ever let you go, really. You have to scrape that stuff off. So it really shows you the effort through this object of representing progress in the world, and we see what it takes now. So I really feel good about these, what I did on this show. All those haters can hate. I don't care at this point. I had a lot of lovers too, gotta say. And this is my finale piece. It was called the Meet Me in the Middle. So this was like about finding common ground, and also gender equality. The pedestal here down at the bottom is representing the art industry, art world, and the A represents female fertility, obviously, and for that it represented like being a woman. So this is gender equality in the arts. And here the pedestal finally takes it over and alleviates that issue. And you can see the humor here also. Like, I really like bring a full range of emotions to the pieces. Like I said, like we laughed, we cried, and you know, like that's what it takes. We just can't exist in horror all the time. You know, it's like, that's the one thing I started to realize about being locked down. It was like, oh, first we're all like worried about dying, but now we have to live. So it's like, that's what I try to bring, that kind of attitude to my work. The 2 points of action in this piece are the egg, like I said, draped over the pedestal, and the frying pan. The frying pan to me is represents like gendering of objects. So it's kind of a trans piece. It's got masculine elements, it's got feminine elements, it's got I put the hole in it on purpose to make it more feminine. It's got obviously a long handle. It's typical material that's made out of is cast iron, which is very heavy and masculine considered. All these objects in our world have hierarchies of gender, hierarchies of value. Like in the taco holder, it has an hierarchy of value. And then I just really wanted to bring the sensuality of glass. That's why we have this sort of full-on penetration scene with the sausages and the frying pan. You said I could talk about that, right?
You just did.
And there we see what the installation looked like on the floor. So how this, obviously these are phalluses. They're wrapping around the pedestal and they're dominating it in their own way. The eggs dominating it. So it's a really interesting piece, I think. And then I just want to put my potatoes back up here. No, oh, that's the last piece on this presentation for Blown Away. So I will now bring up more things. Do we want to have any questions or anything now, or just keep going?
I would say keep going. Again, anyone can unmute yourself and ask questions if you want to. For those of you who did not see Blown Away, Deborah won.
Oh, yeah.
Deborah, I just wanted to say that we had viewing parties here where people were cheering you on. So you had a lot of supporters too, yeah. We had a whole bunch of people come over every week just to watch you go further. So you had tons of queer people in D.C. with huge thumbs up and giving you big hugs every step.
I feel like I need to pay a visit to D.C.
Girl, you got a place to stay.
Okay. I really want to meet some of these fans. It's so fun, like, to meet all the people, and I think some people have become friends, actually. It's kind of interesting, and I really love it. It's like, a lot of the fans are outside of the glass world, obviously. It's just the greater public. That's one thing that Blown Away did. Like, I think the portion of glass people it's pretty low compared to the millions that watched it. So
where was the hot shop?
It was in Hamilton, Ontario, 1 hour outside of Toronto.
Okay, thank you.
What again was your prize, Deborah, for winning?
There was a $60,000 prize package. This was part of it, to $10,000 purchased by the museum store in Corning Museum of Glass. 40,000 Canadian dollars, which really went down fast to 30,000 American dollars. That was painful. There was something else I can't remember. Oh,
residency at Corning.
Yeah, which was valued at the rest of the whatever was left over. So this is called the Buffet Collection. It was available in the Corning Museum store. They need to be restocked. They only have one piece left, but I was due to send some stuff out, and COVID lockdown, it couldn't get out. They closed their museum. But Urban Glass has a lot because I'm here and it makes it much easier. Urban Glass store. So this is part of the $10,000 purchase. I sold anything in a store before. So I developed something called the Buffet Collection, which was objects inspired by my finale. So these are more accessible. So like the eggs, which are kind of like paperweight size. Fans could actually purchase those. They didn't have to be at the art collector level. And that was really nice. There's pieces for $20 in that collection, up to like $30,000. And I just wanted to be able to share people wanted to support me and I wanted to share. So these are some of the more, this is the one piece left at Corning, the double egg, the rare, it's only one.
Is that a vase?
It is a vase, but it's a pretty big vase. It's about 24 inches high, just to show you. And then these potato vases are part of the buffet collection. And these Veronese vases are part, it's a play on a Veronese vase, which is a classic egg shape that the architect Veronese designed back in the Renaissance. So once again, the tongue-in-cheek here.
Brilliant, Deborah. It's Leslie in Venice. You need to spend more time in Venice. I love the Venetian Hypnotic, and I love the Veronese egg. Great.
Well, I was.
And you got a place to stay too. I'm with you, Jim.
I was going to come for the La Stanza di Vetro show, and that's a good segue because I'll show you. That was the thing I was supposed to do in March with probably other people on this call. Is a go to Venice, and there I would show this grouping of large animal feet. Tina Oldnow, I think, has been watching me for a long time, and I think finally she got an opportunity that was like perfect to show the work, which was for those of you who don't know, it was the theme is Americans influenced by the Venice glassmakers, studio glass movement in the United States, people that were influenced by Venice. I was really looking forward to that. The work is somewhere in storage now.
They're supposed to
be on September 5th.
Is that the new?
Stanza di Vetro, yes.
Sorry, that's correct. It is right now supposed to open on September 5th, and the work is supposedly in Venice, we have been told.
Great.
Oh, it made it there?
Well, it didn't seem to be cleared or not at the museum from what we were told, but it made it to the customs in Venice.
Oh, wow.
Leslie might be able to tell us better what that means in Venice.
Well, the customs in Venice is like, you're better off in the customs in Milan, but well, you need me to follow up on that. I shall ask the people from the La Stanza di Vetro follow up on you on that. Guys,
I think the Stanza people are working on it. I mean, it's an entire containerized shipment of everybody's work, from what I understand, at least on the East Coast. Anyway, but thanks.
I know what they're doing. So looking forward to it, Deborah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Probably the size of a cruise ship, that container.
Oh, they're not letting
That's a lot of
here now.
pieces. sorry. So getting back into the work here. So this is a series of large animal feet. So this is a piece that's about 18 inches long. They take a really long time to sculpt these, but one of the things I think about is sort of what it means to be a craftsperson in the early 21st century. At this time, it was late, was it? Turn of the century here. And skill is one thing I really sort of, in owning skill as a woman was one thing I focused on. So I came up with this idea, well, what if I was in the Renaissance? I was a woman, I wasn't allowed to make glass. I don't know if any were. I don't really know the history, but I'm guessing probably not. So I developed a rewriting history fantasy figure that was a female maestro that would, like Joan of Arc, masquerade as a guy and then make glass, but make completely different glass than the guys made. So instead of making like this horse this big that took like forever and this amazing amount of skill, I would leave a lot to the imagination. So I was doing the part of the animal that I felt identified it the most, which was their feet. They're like really like tools. You can see this is a mole. It has these claws. It's obviously like a garden hoe. It's that's like the personality and also like our thumb really defines us. So I was like really interested in how the imagination just fills in the rest, and it leaves people curious about what these animals do. So I'm calling these things endangered animals now, but the the title of the show is going to be Stampede.
But these pieces are available for sale right after the show, the ones that are not in the exhibit?
Yes, some of these are not in the exhibit. This one is in the exhibit, and it would be available after it's released. I guess it's now in Venice. This is a two-toed ostrich. It's hard to guess what this creature would do, but I realized after going to the dreaded zoo with my mom that these things are for cultivating their eggs and keeping them under their bodies. They really, they don't have a lot of brain power, these ostriches, honestly, because when I watched them, they couldn't figure out, they just kept using the foot as a tool for these big eggs. So it's designed to roll the egg back towards it. This is a different one. It's a three-toed ostrich. I'm moving this over. Okay. This one's available and still in the United States. This one's in Venice. It's a mythical three-toed rat. Apparently in Japanese culture, there's a three-toed rat that's like a god or something. I just saw rats a lot parking my car here in New York, and I was just like, I gotta make one of those. So, here we have a penguin, gorgeous creature. Also, like, these feet have to do with a lot with the eggs, and as in the emperor penguin. Close up, you can see the detail on this. I put a lot of hair and fur on these. They take a long time. This one's a smaller piece though. It's only about this big, but still takes a lot of time. It really shows you how much skill it takes to solid sculpt. I didn't want to use any color. I didn't want to take this down into a color exploration, really more of a formal exploration of these animals. This is a frog. These are like suction cups. And really, really, that shows you the range of these creatures we have on our planet. Animals have been used in glass since I think there was glass, been represented in glass by glassmakers. So as this mythical female maestro, I'm like using the standard subject matter, but I wanted to use it in a slightly different way. One of the sculptors I find very inspiring as far as technique goes is Rodin, and how it's very expressive. I wanted to bring a little more expressiveness and quality of the glass to it, these pieces as a sculptor. I was really finding my voice as a sculptor with these pieces, and they were so much fun to make, although grueling simultaneously physically, because some of them are very, very heavy. This is a hippo. This poor foot has to hold like a ton of weight. I mean, here you can see the bottom of it. Weird creatures, but one of the most deadliest creatures on the planet because of its ferocity and its ability to like chomp anything in two. It's like a construction device, like a truck coming at you, like a backhoe or something. And here we have a polar bear. All these animals have a lot of sort of lore and narrative behind them that can be researched and gotten into, and some are endangered, some are invasive, some are urban animals, like exist in urban environments. The bottom of the piece here, it takes a lot of time to get all that furry stuff on there. Just saying.
Deborah, could you talk a little about how you get the texture? This is not cold work. This is done. Could you explain it?
I wanted everything to be done in the hot shop. I really wanted. So these are layers. I put wraps, and then I start manipulating them with the tools like the pincers and whatnot. But at that point, if it's not satisfactory, if it's not sort of fluffy enough or furry enough, I have to go in with a hot torch and take specific areas at a time and then manipulate them. And that's where the time comes in on these things. It's really trying to get that fur down. Obviously, the most important thing in these sculptures is the proportions. And that's one of the things, if you're doing live animals or humans or whatever, proportions are incredibly important. And I think studying figure drawing and figure sculpting is really important. I did all that on my own. I'm kind of self-studied. Actually, through a lot of YouTubes, I would do drawings and how you draw things and stuff like that. And then I started taking drawing courses, figure drawing courses here in New York City. I didn't go to art school, by the way. I studied psychology in undergraduate school. So I was very influenced by psychological theories like psychoanalysis and things. And I think that sort of infused my work a lot, really thinking there was another dimension to it beyond just the surface, which is what we're talking about now, a surface effect. Then I went to grad school at Tulane. So that was at Rutgers University in New Jersey. I went to grad school at Tulane University, but it was and got my master's. That was sort of a self-study program. So once again, I didn't have a lot of guidance what art was, but I think my psychology degree really opened me up to, gave me more than necessary. I just didn't know how to infuse that originally into form, which is what I'm doing now, like really combining the two. And this is one of my faves. It's going to Venice. It's a bat. It's a pretty big object. And as we see, the narrative behind this animal now is like, it's partially, they're saying it's partially responsible for giving COVID to humans along with the pangolin. So there's a lot of human relationships to animals. It's very interesting, I think. That's a close-up. A lot of these photos were done by my studio mate, who's wasn't here this whole lockdown, which I'm happy about. Sorry, Esteban. Esteban Salazar did most of these photographs. And this is a goat. The goat is riddled with folklore. It's considered the devil, a representative of that. And this is a seal, a mammal of the sea. Oh God, duplicate and camel.
Complete with camel toes.
That was legit. Totally, that's camel toe. I got that one really fast. This is a platypus. Weird animal. This is a male platypus. It has it has a venomous spike. It's the only mammal that has venom and lays eggs. The females lay eggs. It's got it all. This has definitely got to be something from evolution, but it's got venom, eggs. It's still a mammal, a very bizarre creature. Looks bizarre, but really cool looking. It's another idea of atypical beauty. And all these feet are kind of atypical beauty, if you want to know the truth. So that's this series that's going to Venice eventually. I was really excited about that show, but there'll be a chance to get re-excited, I guess, hopefully, at some point. I do want to go to Venice and see the show. So let's see. Since we're on the subject of animals, perhaps I will show you this small series of small breed dogs that I did at the Tacoma Museum a couple years ago while on residence there. So another thing I was thinking is like, why are they making the hugest animals so small? Why don't we make the smallest animals huge? So I wanted to like reverse that equation. So the pug, here we have the pug, is definitely bigger than your average everyday pug that I've seen anyway, unless there's some gigantic ones out there. So they are about this big, sculpted in Tacoma with the Museum of Glass team. Side view. Really cool. This is the Chihuahua. The Chihuahua comes with, I saved this, the golden poo. Take a look at that face. It's just so like, I didn't do it. Yeah, you did it. So it's got gold leaf on it. Just saying. Jack Russell, this is one of my more faved small animal breeds, except for when it gets excited. They were very popular. I was going to Belgium a lot, and they were very popular there. They were everywhere, and I don't know why, but they were really popular dogs. And this is a Boston Terrier. So these 4 dogs, this is very difficult pieces to make. So I really do appreciate having the help from the museum. Can't take full credit for those. Really, some of my favorite pieces I've ever had made. And now, what would you like me to show? Some of the other sculpture I've done, or since?
I'd love to see your lighting line. I think that is, although it is site specific, it is impressive. Not that the other work is not impressive, but.
Yes, prior to like really sort of, I think I was very happy that Blown Away sort of launched me as an artist, because most of what I did, people didn't know. I think people knew that I was skilled and I taught a lot of people, but I didn't have a public view, place that I showed my work. I showed my work, which was lighting at that point, through site-specific art. And that, I'm going to show you some of that work. It was sold salon style. So my rep, Matt Ames from Site Specific Art, he has a very high-end clientele of architects and interior designers that go to him specifically. He cultivated these people, and but it's all behind the scenes, and these are in people's apartments, and he doesn't have a gallery, so it's like most people don't know the range of what I've done. So this is like an iconic piece from my collaboration with him and Site Specific Art, and so I'm going to run through some of these. You can see we've done a lot of projects together over the years, and really skill-based. I was really love technique, especially technique of Venetian glass, because it's so challenging. I want to use some of those techniques with simple forms in a combination of human meets glass. So using Murinis and cane, and this is a drum form. Here, this piece is purchased by the owner of Knoll Furniture, which I consider a great compliment, because he's got a lot of things to buy from his own company that are gorgeous. But this is in his kitchen, and his wife's kitchen. So it's tons and tons of those eye Murinis, the classic black and white Murini, I think, made by Venini. I think they made it popular. I'm not a glass historian, so I do not fully know if I'm accurate, but I've seen it in their work. And this is fused together, however, it's squeezed, so they pop out. Instead of in blowing, when you blow it, the lower coefficient of expansion expands more, so you get the texture that way. But in this, I did it by squeezing in the kiln. Actually, I squeezed it in the glory hole. And this piece is called Ringo. Ringo is a film, a Japanese film. It's a horror film, and Ringo weighs 100 pounds. That's why and it has rings, so it's like a horror to make. This is like life-threatening, but the Tisches own these, a pair of these pieces. This is more pieces formed on a pastorelli, then cut and beveled together. It's really labor-intensive to make this type of lighting. Definitely not production work. This is in the Hamptons. It's called Venetian Hypnotic. Once again, I think Venetian glass is pretty damn seductive. So I was like, this would be it is over a dining room at Hampton's house. So when you look up, you're like using the classic form of getting hypnotized of the spinning wheel. You would get it 100 times over from the Venetian glass. Here I'm using texture. I use texture a lot. I pull forms, I cut them up, I reheat them, and I put them on the surface. A lot of these techniques are becoming more commonplace nowadays as more and more people try to do these things. But when I started, there wasn't a lot of this kind of like thing going on. So I think, I don't know if I was I was at the sort of beginning of the wave of handmade glass in the United States as lighting and bridging the gap between art and lighting in some way, I think. But I wasn't really known because it was behind the scenes. A fuse piece, plaid. These are a kitchen piece. These are all custom. I go to these houses, I make models, I make small models, I do studies. It's slow. They're not production items at all. It's not a production process. It's like people really want something that's specific for their house sometimes, that and they can feel fairly secure about my aesthetic and what they're going to get based on prior pieces and the modeling. I always go in with a life-size model to make sure the scale is correct. That's one thing that is really tricky, a scale in different spaces. This is through an architect named Thad Hayes. He was really well known. He's kind of semi-retired now. More masculine style piece. I think we worked together developing the concept for this piece. He sort of defined the metal there. And this opaline Murini with silver Murini all cut up and fused together. It's right against the ceiling because nowadays we have like a lot of different light sources that don't generate so much heat, and you can put lighting like in so many different ways and not get that hideous LED lighting from the past. LEDs developed really, really quickly and have made light. You can do almost anything with lighting now. This is a ceiling piece where there's very little space, so I have to deal with, people call me in when they have specific areas where they can't find something on the market, even though they like those pieces, they don't fit in their space. So they will hire me to conceive of a piece for restricted areas sometimes. It's a more generic piece of trailing. And then there's architectural pieces that I do for, this is in a restaurant in Long Island, and I call it Frozen Water. It's a dividing wall, it's a curtain wall. It's about 4,000 pieces that I cast at Urban Glass. A lot of work went into that one. And they all had to be drilled. Every single piece had to be drilled twice to line up on the hanging components you see at the top. So I had to develop a jig and drills. It was a lot of work goes into these handmade pieces. This is a more recent piece. It's in a subterranean space on Charles Street. It's in a fitness area in the subterranean. It's 3 floors below ground. And these pieces are based on water and sun and sand and a beach scene. This is at the end of the pool. People really did like it. This was just trying to bring, I think I was really influenced by de Kooning's aesthetic because he was, spent a lot of time in Long Island, and I was looking at a book of his, and these colors I think I took from a painting of his. Each piece is about this big, and I developed a special technique of sculpting a sphere. I threw it back into the furnace, and then I took the ladle and cast it out. This is in the same building, but on the ground level, and this is their reception area. They receive all their packages and whatnot. So I developed the panels in these crosshatch panels. So this is sort of how I've survived for a lot of years.
Now you are represented by Heller Gallery.
They say I've been representing some of my recent work, posts Blown Away.
Thank you, Doug and Katja.
Yeah, for all the support to our class community. You can see
And privilege.
The pieces up here were made by me, the pieces over the fireplace. So this is another Hamptons house. A lot of these houses people only go to in the summer or infrequently in the winter. So I do the installs in the winter. Really like spending a lot of time. Like I slept there and I thought about it and I did drawings and I'm like getting exhausted just talking about it. So I did a life-size model, and that's my last image of the site-specific artwork. Okay. It's so quiet with everybody muted.
I know. That's why I would love.
Deborah, it's Bill Weisberger. You said you make life-size models. What are the models made of?
Well, in the case of that last piece, I bought sort of electrical wire that it would mold into the, I use all different materials. It could be tin foil, it could be aluminum, mesh, anything that I could easily manipulate, cardboard, foam. So stuff like that, that I then, it's almost like making a sculpture, but you can't go in there and like do glass production without being really secure, because these things I'm conceiving of for a certain person's, you know, like some of them have repetition. What just happened?
I just took you off speaker view because you're talking and not showing something, and I wanted everybody to be able to see you.
Okay, thanks. Some of the pieces, models are up here, like not the life-size ones, but small models are above me. So if we just go like, you didn't see the ceiling of my space. Let's see if you can see it. Like, where is the model? There. There's a model of the meat chandelier, which I'm going to show you. So I make small models. I do drawings. My drawing might look like this. I might bring a drawing, something like this, to the person. A small model. It's a lot of process. It's a lot of work to get to the point where I'll get a down payment, obviously. So I'm not just doing it like, woo, I'm coming to your house. So they'll have an investment in the process from the start. And then I get to know the space more and the people more. So yeah, life-size models and then sampling. So in the case of the last piece, I'll make some of those forms and bring them there. This is all vetted between an interior decorator or an architect. So we have a translator person that works with us on it. So they have confidence in that person, and confidence, that's how they build confidence in me, because they don't know me.
You know, I took your screen sharing away and forgot you have not shown your meat chandelier from that Corning actually purchased. So do you want to take the screen back and share it and show us?
Okay. Yes, I will show that work. Now that was a triumph of last year. I was really having a lot of momentum with my career post Blown Away. So I was in the New Glass Now show. That piece got purchased by Corning. A piece got purchased by the Toledo Museum from the show that was at Heller that Matthew Perez and Fag Signs headed up. Called the piece was called "Oh God." Where is this? Okay, other sculpture. Here we go. So what I'm going to show you now is some of these pieces that I did. Okay. So this piece, many of you probably saw it because you probably visit Corning, I'm assuming. And that was what this drawing I just showed you was a preliminary drawing I did on my iPad, and then eventually became this. And I used the same technique I used for my clients for myself, because I was at it took me 2 years to get it to the point where I finished this piece. I started doing it on residencies because, as we all know, glass is expensive. So it's sometimes there's not enough extra income to invest in something on the scale. So it took me a while. I was through residencies at Tyler, at CCS in Detroit. I was able to make a lot of these pieces, and then it was a matter of developing an armature that would support it. And I'm a member of this group called the Burnt Asphalt Family, who hasn't done much work in the past couple of years, but they cook with food and do performances. And they were doing a show called How Can We Dine at place in New Rochelle, New York, and they invited me to finish this piece. They're like, you gotta finish that piece. And I was at a standstill. I just had to solve the armature problems. I didn't know how to get the arms to stick out in the posture I wanted. So I developed a system, eventually developed a system and also to support the weight, but not be huge and obtrusive visually. So it was accepted into New Glass Now show. I have to thank the Burn Asphalt family for getting me to finish it, actually. And it became a very seminal piece, and I think it demarcated me entering the sculptural world and being noticed and getting the work out there finally, and being sort of recognized for being an artist. And so this is the past 5 years I've been developing some work on this, and then the show really launched it, because it's not a typical path I was on. I didn't go through a gallery. Yeah, I was making all this stuff. It's like a lot of stuff. You can see all the animal feet and the dogs, and so now I really wanted to combine my chandelier work with art, and this is a functional chandelier, although I think it's an art piece first and a chandelier second. So I'm really honored to have it in the Corning collection. Here's some close-ups so you can see the detail on these pieces. And
this is big. It's a big piece.
Yeah, this piece is at least 9 feet tall, and so its wingspan is about 7 or 8 feet. Very happy with this piece. My next incarnation, I'm going to do more pieces in this. I did get an artist residency at Urban Glass, and my proposal was to do the next incarnation, which is Paltry. So this is what I'm going to work on once that opens up. That studio opens up and we can actually go in. I can start work on something, which is very encouraging, because that's part of the, I just got cut off for the last 3 months. It was like everything I had hoped to do and all the momentum I had from the show was now like nothing. It went from, like I was in a Ferrari to now I'm in a jalopy. So it's like.
Where's the lighting on this piece? Diane Farber wants to know, and I can see it, so. But you want to show her where it is?
So do you see the end of the sausage links? If I don't know how to expand this into a bigger thing. But so on the end, there's these little light bulbs at the end of every strand. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
Yes, you can see it.
How do you make this bigger? I don't even want to know. Okay.
I don't know.
So
you can use your cursor to point to one or two, possibly.
Yeah, right. There's one. Can you see that? There's one. You can see that right here. At the end of each strand of the sausage link strands, there's a little light bulb. So it does function. It's electrified. It's not meant to be like functional dining light, though. It's meant to be a sculpture. It's meant to be a statement on, well, Susie's, the curator at Corning called it a sausage fest. I would never refer to making a commentary on Sausage Fest, but this is going back to me reflecting on what do I make, like the gendering of this occupation, the gendering of objects, owning the hot shop as a woman, really using that as a statement. So I looked at what chandeliers typically were made out of. They're reference flowers. So I went the opposite way. I wanted meat. really love this piece. So back to these. And then I went to SOFA with the Heller Gallery, and they asked me for something relating to the meat chandelier. So I developed these meat chains, which also are reflecting on Italian glass. Most of these are Italian pieces of meat. I think that one link there is a Polish one, sorry. But that one's not available anyway, so don't worry about that. All the others are Italian, soprasadas, things like salames and things like that. So also once again reflecting on Italian glass. What'd you say?
Tell it.
Soppressa.
Soppressa.
Oh, thank you.
Piano, the Venetian's telling you. It looks fabulous. Brilliant.
We
did see these at Heller. They were brilliant.
So you can see this. I'm going to show you, these are the ones that are still available. One was purchased. Some of the, I have them in my studio. Close-ups. These things are so beautiful and sensual. It's the way people fall in love with food. You know, food is so seductive. Glass is so seductive. Who considers meat seductive? It's not the classic, but I want it to consider it seductive because it comes in so many beautiful forms, especially in Italy. This is the string made out of the opal Duro glass. And so when you blow it, I didn't blow into the string. I put the string around it, the glass string, and then I blew it up. They was playing with that idea of one thing has a different coefficient of expansion of another. So, you know, these sculptures do take a lot of skill. That's the one thing I really hated about the show, and it still gets to me. They put me like as, they did paint me as a sculptor, but they weren't giving enough credit to how much skill it takes to be a sculptor. Yes, it takes a lot of skill to make a red cello, but sculpting glass is hard too, people. But I realized they did that for narrative reasons, and it's a pet peeve of mine, because I think it does add a huge range of techniques I could use that I didn't feel like I got credit for.
What's the size? What's the size of that, Deborah? The scale.
This sausage is almost like real life sausage. Like it's about like this size. I'll get one for you. So.
She happens to have a sausage.
One of the pieces, this is one of the pieces that came off one of the meat chains. So you can see, it's like, that's my hand with it.
So they're authentic size, okay.
Just trying to be realistic, actually, but not hyper realistic. For some reason, I wanted, I wanted to be seductive. So I wanted to bring some glassiness to it that you normally, I wanted to have a style as a sculptor, not just duplicate something accurately. I wanted to bring something more to it. How I feel with glass on a sort of intimate level, I wanted to bring that out as a sculptor. That's where looking up to sort of Rodin as a sculptor came in for me. I felt like he really did that really well in his work. Oh yeah, yeah, I'm really like Rodin.
Deb, you are Deb. I just wanted to say that the chains, as you saw them hanging, are about 6.5 to 7 feet, just so you know, for dimension purposes.
Thank you. I'm not good at that sort of thing, given the details.
I know you're not getting the feedback because we're all silenced, but they're just fabulous, Deborah. Just fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm like, ooh, is there anybody out there? It's just like crickets.
I know it's hard. It's hard.
I introduced you to a queer fan of yours, Deborah.
Yeah.
He loves you. All right, this is Terry, our studio coordinator. She's been dying to say hello to you. So
hey. Well, now I'm planning a trip to DC. Thanks.
I'll use Terry as bait. I'll remember that next time. Oh, no. Kidding. Terrible thing to say.
I'm gonna hold you to
it.
We're being recorded, folks.
Okay, never mind. This is me too. We don't do that. All right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, I forgot we were being recorded.
Yes.
Curse words.
That's all right. No, curse words are fine.
That shit.
We don't have a censor, but we are being recorded.
Ejaculate.
They do look good enough to eat.
Don't they? They're fabulous.
Oh. They're so cute, right? I think this is not the one I just showed you, but it's one similar. It's one of my personal favorites. It's good when you fall in love with your own work.
Deborah, the one you just showed us have like fingers around the sausage, if I may be so bold to.
Howard, I'm going to mute you.
No, it doesn't. Just those are mine.
May want to think about that.
This is one of my personal faves. The chop. Really love how this one came out. The texture, and I did a lot of color exploration. I bought thank you Gaffer Glass. Except that thank you Gaffer Glass for making awesome colors. And they're very helpful with getting the right frit sizes. And I was like, I need something that looks like dead meat, but not disgusting. And they're like, okay, we got this range for you. Or bone. The bone color was particularly hard. You just can't. This is the thing I find with some glass sculpting I don't like. It becomes a little cartoony because the research wasn't put into colors. I just don't want, I want to really research my colors when I use color thoroughly. I think that's really, really important to bring that into it. I think there's a last, wait, is that a last slide? No, wait, something's happening. Oh, here. Oh, there we go. Then I could, at fan request, I gotta say, they really pushed me to make some of these for that they could own. Here I put them on dirt, glass dirt, which is frit.
That is fabulous.
And these definitely are available through the Heller Gallery. There's like 3 of them in existence that have not been purchased as sets. I wanted to think of them as installations rather than single potatoes. And I just needed to get these out in the world, but the fans like really wanted these pieces. So I did it, and I really love making them. I say the word really a lot, excuse me. It's recorded. You can count the amount of times later. And just really poetic pieces. So I really put my heart and soul into each one of these and getting its feeling correct and its colors correct. And for me, what I feel is what I want it to say, like how many, done a lot of research on these as well.
The potatoes made me fall in love with you on the show, by the way.
Oh, that's what I wanted them to do. Thank you. They're life-size pretty much. That's one thing I learned from Kathy, actually. She's a very intelligent artist. And she just said one thing, like, why are you making them, like I started making them large. I'm like, oh, she really like got the brain matter going a little bit, because what was I trying to say? It wasn't easy to do that show, let me tell you, because it was a lot of pressure, and I didn't necessarily have your idea totally figured out from every aspect within a 24-hour period. So you had to rely on yourself a lot to just trust yourself, and you couldn't miss something critical to a piece.
I also want to point out the dirt. Deborah, we do have many color samples of the dirt. Deborah really did her homework on that, and you can see the different frit size that has served, and color that has served as the dirt.
It was really important to me to get the buds right as well. There's something about something just sprouting, some delicacy to it, and then it's amazing the palette of colors those things take. So many people have sent me images of potatoes since then. Just saying, I think I need to use them in some way. Hey, I got this on Instagram. I got this potato today. Okay. But I love it. This is one of my favorite pieces of all times, and it was a kind of a seminal piece. I showed it at Wheaton Arts, and I made it at Wheaton Arts on a residency. I wouldn't have been able to make it anywhere else. This is erbium glass. The color in itself is $1,000 to color this much glass. It's 400 pounds of erbium glass. Each bead on the thing is about this big. This is erbium glass, but the lighting is not making it look as sexy and pink as it really is in real life. It's affected by lighting. And this is a beaded fruit, like it's a craft kit. You see that one there that's pink? That's what it's modeled after. This is conceptually about crafting, and it's not just about women's craft becoming monumental. It's about craft in general. A few years ago, within the last 10 years, was kind of a 4-letter word. Universities were taking its name out of their titles. Like California College of Arts and Crafts changed to California College of Arts, and it was happening. It was rampant. Parsons took crafting out of their curriculum. I was like, what is wrong with the hands? What is wrong with the crafting? What is wrong with our making things with your body? That's like, why is it such like they don't want to, they're shunning craft. And so I started to do a series that was like playfully investigating like silly things that would be considered craft, like these craft kits to make these fruit, then turning them into these monumental, like sensual sculptures. This one could actually go outside. It's made out of stainless steel. It has a stainless steel core, stainless steel screws. The leaf is stainless, and the beads are solid glass that are, if it was to get vandalized, each one's replaceable individually. So I tried to make, that's another thing you don't see frequently, is public art made out of glass. So I was trying to bridge that gap as well. Like, how do we get it outside? So we know large glass is subject to stresses very easily. It's very fragile, actually.
I think we should send a picture to the mayor of Atlanta. It'd be a perfect outdoor piece for Georgia peach.
Perfect. So that's a big juicy peach that looks like this, but is like monumental scale. Addressing crafting, I just really sort of broke my heart when I saw that happening at schools. And then, so this is like, I started to do a discourse with different types of craft, like flame working versus glass blowing. And within our own crafting, there's these hierarchies. And so I started to just duplicate flame work pieces on these little pieces of fruit, and how like funny the technique is to make them. And then just monumentalizing things like this. Just having a dialogue with craft itself and glass itself. This is a small bicycle that I made about like 24 inches long, probably. These pieces are available too. And now I'm just gonna like show you this another piece, the piece that was purchased by the Toledo Museum called Oh God. I have to give credit to Matthew Perez here for having the vision to start fag signs, and for Heather giving him the opportunity to launch a show that was like queer voices, collaborations with queer voices, me being one of them. And he wanted everybody that was involved with that show to re-empower a word. And my word was invisible, because that's what I kind of felt as people that, in general, as women, were considered invisible. And then to be a queer woman on top of that, with for various reasons we don't have to get into now, there's a lot of invisibility with the voice and power. So I use the opportunity to re-empower invisible. And then I made this piece called Oh God. This is now in Toledo Museum. And it was based on Martina Navratilova and Joan of Arc combined. It's sitting on the altar of male cooking, the barbecue grill. It has glass charcoal, a tennis player here, that trophy top. Martina just is one of those people that didn't get enough credit for what she did. She was a champion, yet she didn't get the advertising contracts because she didn't look a certain way. And this is what we were facing back then. Like, this is what I mean by invisible. She was a total champion, a total badass, but she was also kind of, in my eyes, kind of a martyr, because she was, it's off people like her and her shoulders that people now can get those contracts. And some women like the Williams sisters are some of the most highly paid tennis players on the planet now, which is amazing. I really love that idea that they've achieved that. So this just shows you that things can change. It's horrible when you're going through it, but it's important to know that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You have to stick with it. You have to show up for it, and you have to look at the issues and advance the issues. You have to look at your own prejudices and how. That's what I was doing with the voter card when I started with you. I had privilege in putting that up. I investigated my privilege. Now I understand my own mentality through it. I am not perfect with my issues. Yes, I'm a queer woman, but that doesn't make me an expert in all these issues. I'm an artist, and I actually realized through the show and through these crises, the worth of research. And that's one thing I vowed on the show to investigate more. It really want to do pieces that have been researched, that have concept in them and people can relate to. But like I said, in a fun way with a full range of emotions. I want to bring people into these concepts, not push people away from these concepts. Like, we are all into this together. We're all allies. I know people out there have struggled. Their families have been persecuted. I know that for sure. So we are all in this together. And I'm just looking in the mirror more and more. It's not easy, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. So, and the more you learn, let's just keep evolving. So I think that maybe.
Well, very, very positive words to end on, Deborah. And I'm going to stop your sharing again so we can get to you. And I just want to, if we have questions, now's your time to ask them. Otherwise, we will say thank you so very much. Your presentation so timely. And I feel so privileged to have gotten to know you. So.
Yeah, likewise. And thank you for sticking with this presentation. It felt purposeful to do it, and I'm really needed to take the next step, into getting back into life. Multiple external traumas. We have our personal journeys, and there's these external journeys too that transpire around us. So it's helpful to do things like this and to know you can make one of the before I go.
Okay.
I have gotten so much positive feedback from the show. I was talking about haters, but let's forget about them. I just want to tell you how I get feedback that is so meaningful. So I'm going to tell you, through the Buffet collection at Urban Glass, people reach out for those more affordable pieces. And I get notes like that, I'm going to read to you. And I've gotten hundreds of emails that made me feel like my life was meaningful. Like I could die tomorrow and I would have affected so many people's lives. So the person wrote, my boyfriend and I are celebrating our 2-year anniversary during COVID quarantine. While we've been indoors the last few months, we fell in love with Deborah and her performance on Blown Away. She embodies so much of what we fought for as 2 gay men growing up in conservative families. I can't think of a better anniversary gift and a way to commemorate or commiserate the last few months than a glass hand sanitizer blob by Deborah. I make these things, and this is what they connect it with. It's heartwarming. And people write huge emails to me saying that my persona on the show was meaningful, and it gives me meaning too. So it's a mutual back and forth between the people and me. It's been so heartwarming. I'm so glad I did that show, honestly.
Well, we thank you for sharing your persona with us today, and I want to thank all of our AACG members, and I hope that we continue to see more of you because you're very talented. So thank you, Deborah, very, very much for this.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah.
Bravo, Deborah.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Vediamo a Venezia.